we're going to make some watermelon and we're going to fancy it up a little bit. If you've ever taken watermelon to a barbecue before, it's pretty casual. But you can take watermelon and it doesn't have to be super casual, but it's a pretty interesting dessert. Now, what I've done is I've gotten the small watermelon. You can use large size too. I got the small watermelon. I cut myself 2 pretty good thick slices, about 1 inch thick. I'm cutting them up in quarters because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting them on this white platter. That's the way I'm going to display them and serve them. If you have a wide enough refrigerator, you certainly could put a large platter like this in your refrigerator. If not, these could be laid out even just on a paper plate, 4 at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put these all over my plate, and I will kind of show you as I do this how this looks. These are each going to be an individual serving for this watermelon dessert. All right, so let me kind of show you, lift it up so you can kind of see. Now you could put it, if you had a big enough circular platter, you could probably put it in a big circle. I just don't have one, so I'm kind of doing it in no certain pattern, just so they all fit. Because I will be putting saran wrap on this and putting it in the refrigerator until we eat it. Now, to prepare for our ingredients, some of the things that I had to do. First thing I had to do, I got some almonds. Now, I got the slivered almonds. The slivered almonds, they're white and they're long, about maybe 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. And I toasted them a little bit in the pan. You could put a tiny little bit of butter in if you wanted, like a dot. But really what you want to do is toast them on a low heat just until you start smelling them, and then turn them off. Mine turned a little more brown than typically I do, but they're toasted and delicious. The whole kitchen smelled like toasted almonds. Now, do you have to have any nuts? No. You don't have to put nuts on this at all. Pepitas are really good on this. You could do pistachios on this. You could toast them or not toast them. Even sunflower seeds would work. It really is up to you. Now let's go ahead and let's talk about what we're going to put on the watermelon. First thing we're going to do is we're going to be using 2 ingredients that are some of my favorite. This actual recipe, you could use liqueur. You could use La Campari, I believe. It's a very bitter. There are people that know all the different flavors of all the liqueurs. I know raspberry liqueur might be really good with this. I tend to just use the pomegranate juice, the straight pomegranate juice. I like the flavor, and then the kids, you don't have to worry about them eating this. And so, now you could put this in a pan, you could reduce it. Now when you reduce it, you just boil it a little bit, and it gets a little bit thicker. You put a spoon in it, and you can actually tell it's just getting a little bit thicker. You don't need to do that. I typically don't. I just pour this in, and I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do with it. So I have just maybe 1/3 cup, and then I'm gonna put a little honey in. Yes, I love honey, can you tell? Put a little bit of honey in, so it's a little sweet. That's probably maybe a tablespoon, you know, give or take. Remember, you can decide your own flavors. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stir this up. I'm going to put a little bit of salt in it. Yes, a little bit of salt, believe it or not. Now, what I'm gonna do with this is dissolve my honey, and if you needed to heat this up a little bit to dissolve your honey, that's not a problem, because typically you could make this dessert ahead before guests arrived, or even family, or even your own immediate family, just to bring it out at the table. It'd be a little bit unique if you have adventurous eaters. It'd be a little unique for them, but I think you'd really be surprised. The flavors just go really well with each other. I'm gonna move this over, and I'm going to get one of my brushes. It's just a pastry brush, and I'm gonna take this honey-soaked pomegranate juice, and I'm going to brush it pretty heavily on all the watermelon. One of the reasons I like this recipe too is you don't have to worry about alcohol, of course, you know, if you're not using the alcohol. If it's an adult party, you certainly could use the alcohol. It's absolutely delicious, I understand, with a bunch of different flavors, even bitter flavors. But what's really nice about this, you could get a watermelon that's not super sweet, and it still would taste really good, because this pomegranate juice is just so flavorful. Now, typically what I'll do is you could even take a skewer and you could just poke holes in all the watermelons, just little holes, because they're gonna be covered up. And then you could put a little bit more of this on, but it does absorb quite a bit even if you don't poke them. So I'm just kind of putting it on top. It'll sit on top and it'll just kind of soak into the watermelon. The watermelon's so cold. This is such a refreshing dessert. I really love it. Now, I'm gonna set that aside, and what we're gonna build next is we're going to build what we're gonna put on top. So I have mascarpone cheese. Now, I might not say it exactly properly, but that's how I call it, mascarpone. Some people might call it. It's just a container of like a cream cheese, but it's a different flavor than cream cheese. So it's not, it's almost hard to describe. It's used in tiramisu. And so it's like a cream cheese, but an Italian cream cheese maybe is where it originated from. So what I did was I grabbed a big scoop of that out and I just let it sit at room temperature. And the reason I did that is because we want to be able to spread this. So let me grab my spatula. I'm going to go ahead and put this in my pan. Now that it's nice and soft. You could run this through the microwave just for like 20 seconds or something like that, maybe not even, especially if you were planning on putting this in the refrigerator, just to kind of heat it up so it's spreadable. Now to that, I'm going to just take some plain, I have vanilla yogurt. In fact, I don't even think it's vanilla. I think it's just plain yogurt. I have some plain yogurt. I'm going to give a big scoop. In fact, I only have a little bit left in this container. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in the rest of it. Not a lot. And I will put the ingredients down, the exact ingredients of the recipe. But remember, the exact ingredients isn't what makes this yours. The ingredients that you want to add and how you want it to taste is really more important. So I'm stirring this up. So I have my Greek yogurt. I have my marscapone. Now I'm going to put in just a little bit more honey. Could you use confectionate sugar? You could. You could use confectionate sugar a little bit if you wanted, if you didn't have honey. Regular sugar, yes, but you're gonna want to stir it till it dissolves so it's not, grainy. All right, so what we have is we have a real soft, it actually is like the consistency of yogurt. And so that's the way we want it. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and take my pomegranate juice soaked watermelon, and I am going to put a little bit on each. It's really easy to spread if you soften this. It's really hard to work with and have it come together if it's really hard from the refrigerator. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spatula. I'm just going to kind of flatten this out on each slice of watermelon. So each piece of watermelon is going to have a big dollop of this cheese mixture on top. Let's give you a little bit more over here. Just kind of spread it out a little evenly. Remember, they're going to be cutting this with a fork and a knife and or eating it over a plate, holding the rind, because the rind is still attached. You certainly could cut the rind off if you wanted. That is certainly an option. All right, so I have these all spread out. Now, let's go ahead and let's see what our next ingredient is. Our next ingredient is a fun one. Our next ingredient is going to be cherries. And what I did was I just got big cherries and I seeded them and I cut them in half. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you how I do that. So to get my cherries cut in half and seeded, I buy them like this. The stems are attached. Pull off the stem. Of course, I wash them and I kind of dry them with a paper towel. I have a cherry pitter. It's also an olive pitter. You could probably use it for a number of things. There's like 5 or 6 different kinds of these. I have kind of a collection. They're pretty amazing. This one has like a clear guard at the bottom that can be taken apart and washed. So when you put your cherry there and you put the top right there, this pin is gonna come down, it's gonna knock the pit right out of there if you line it up. I like the guard because it keeps things from splattering, because it can splatter. So once the pits come out of the bottom, I went ahead and I cut them all in half. So pull the stem off, line it up at the top here with the pin, go ahead and press it down, and the seed comes right out. It's really remarkable. Certainly a fun thing to do. I think the reason that I got so many of them collected was because my kids enjoyed more getting the seeds out of the cherries. Okay, so once you've gotten the cherries pitted and cut in half, I have a whole bowl of them. I'm going to set my cherry pitter aside. Clean up my area here. I'm going to get my watermelon with my mascarpone cheese that's on, and I'm going to take my cherries and I'm going to place them on top of each watermelon slice. Just a few pieces of cherries on top of each watermelon slice. And you know, you could just sprinkle this on because there would be a whole bunch left over on the bottom of this tray. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. I sometimes think that it looks nicer if the cherries are faced up, you know, the cut side up, but boy, does this look good. On a hot summer day, a special treat. You have all the fruit. This is the perfect time of the year for this kind of recipe too. All right, so I have all these cherries on top of my mascarpone cheese. And now what I'm going to do is add a couple more ingredients before we can call this ready to eat. Let me go ahead and use just a few more. Wow, these are piled high. All right, let me just kind of show you what I have here. Grab my towel. So we have watermelon slices, pomegranate juice on them. We have the mascarpone cheese mixture with the honey and the Greek yogurt, and we have cherries all over them. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take these almonds and I'm going to sprinkle the almonds over the top of all the slices with the pink cherries. Now, this might not look or even appeal to you right now, but boy, I'll tell you what, if you give this combination a try, if you're an almond lover, I really have tried this with all different kinds of nuts, and these really hit the spot. You certainly could use the sliced ones. You don't have to use the slivered almonds. All right, so now, last ingredient, a little bit of mint. Now, mint is really strong, so you don't want to put a lot necessarily on. It's really more for garnish. People that like mint know that what it is, and you know they'll appreciate it. But if it's a real strong herb, so we don't want to put a lot on. And the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to end this with a little bit of orange zest. So I'm going to grab the orange, put a little bit on top, and all the oils just fall right off onto the watermelon slices. Boy, can I smell that. Just adds an element, another element of flavor with the orange zest on top. All right, almost ready to get this in the refrigerator until guests arrive. I'd love it if you give this a try. This is really, really tasty. I'm gonna try to walk up toward the camera and give you a close-up. Delicious, delicious.